video is brought to you by Raycon and their all new everyday earbuds. It's a massive glow up for Raycons, adding new features like active noise cancelling and multi-device connect, all while remaining at Raycon's famously reasonable price. Click the link below to get 20% off your order or stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
Atomfall is an interesting game to talk about. In my preview video, I said that Atomfall isn't what you think it is, that despite appearances, it's not a sprawling RPG like Fallout. It's a smaller scale AA game, sporting some decent combat, some simple design that gives it quite an immersive quality, and some so-so exploration. I think that assessment is still true of the full release. In terms of scope, Atomfall is more or less what I expected. It's still within the bounds of what Rebellion have delivered before with their Sniper Elite series. What I didn't expect was just how compelling its non-linear structure would be. Something I couldn't quite grasp in my short preview was its storytelling conceit. There was this promise of a game where your journey would be shaped by who you place your trust in, with other forces at work attempting to sway that trust. Given the scope of Rebellion's previous games, I was low-key a bit skeptical about whether they'd be able to pull this off. But I'm pleased to say that they've exceeded my expectations here. I was genuinely impressed by how deeply you can pry and prod during these conversations, and the unexpected ways in which the game will reward or punish you for doing so. But Atomfall also leaves a lot on the table. While its narrative structure does demonstrate Rebellion's ambition, it's difficult to overlook their reluctance to push any of the other game elements to the same degree. Its alternate history setting provides an interesting backdrop, but lacks the variation in its visuals to prevent exploration from getting stale. There were times where the game's less is more approach to design allowed me to be completely immersed in the moment, a feeling I've come to deeply value in video games, only for the illusion to be regularly broken by some video gamey full-screen menu or underbaked enemy AI. And finally, core gameplay systems like combat and stealth are functional, but little more than that, offering very few ways to change up your approach to encounters. Overall, Atomfall feels like a game made in the Xbox 360 era. What I mean by that is, that era felt like a time where game design wasn't so homogenized. Each new title had to fight for their place, really pushed to have their own way of doing things, as opposed to now, where there's such a common way of handling things like narrative structure, exploration, inventory, and combat. Atomfall feels like a game made in a time where that isn't the case, where they had to figure out all this stuff on their own and lean heavily on that unique conceit to stand out. And that leads to mixed results. For me, Atomfall is so trimmed back and so economical that it only just sustains a single playthrough. But ultimately, I'm really glad to have played it. I'm glad I got to experience its fascinating structure that puts you in full control over your story, its characters who are each so memorable, and its old school charms make for a rather refreshing experience in a time where game design can often feel a tad predictable.
The citizens of Windham, you are reminded that any building
hear the bells, but we do not know the bells.
You're not with the soldiers, are you?
Where did you come from then?
Atomfall is set in an alternate history of the Windscale Fire of 1957, a real-world disaster in which a nuclear reactor caught fire, spreading radioactive fallout across the UK. Here, that event has also mysteriously caused strange flora and fauna to emerge from the ground. Some people have begun to hear voices, others completely transformed into ghouls, and all telecommunication has been scrambled. As a result, the government have walled off the area as a quarantine zone for the protection of the people, not because they're hiding anything, of course. You wake up in the quarantine zone with amnesia, and you're told to get the hell out of there, but not before digging deeper into the conspiracy that lies at the heart of all this, so that you can let the world know what really went down. What follows then is a 10 to 12 hour journey, bouncing between about 4 modestly sized zones and making contact with those that have been stuck here for the last 5 years, in the hope that they'll get you one step closer to an escape plan or uncovering the secrets of the Windscale disaster. Now the cool part is that there's no golden path guiding you through all this. See, Atomfall is kind of like a detective game. The main conceit is that your journey is guided by your own findings and your relationship to the characters that you meet along the way. And those characters really impressed me, like right from the jump. Their voice acting in particular is excellent across the board, with well-written dialogue filled with Britishisms that made them each such endearing caricatures.
You'll forgive me if I'm less than cordial on first acquaintances, I'm sure. New faces often mean trouble. And yet, they may bring new opportunities too.
Was really surprised actually about how much you can poke and prod at everything they say. I found that almost every time. If they mentioned something I was unfamiliar with or seemed a little sus, I could really push to have them elaborate, leading to some conversations being like 5 to 10 minutes long. But they're not all so trusting. Often they'll hold their cards close to their chest, and you'll need to be really careful about asking the right questions, knowing when to be pushy, or just when to keep your damn mouth shut. Here's a good example. I came upon this friendly chap and wanted to just be an open book, so I told him that I was hearing strange voices through the phone booths.
You what? Phones have been disconnected for years. Take a knock on the noggin, did you?
He started to get a little unnerved, but no, I kept assuring him that the voice was real, only for him to eventually cut off the conversation completely, squashing any hope I had for getting information out of him.
Now, I think you should be on your way. Be better for the both of us.
But if you approach these interactions with a little more care or stumble upon notes out in the world, you'll often open up a lead, revealing some point of interest on the map or having you line up the coordinates yourself. You'll then follow that lead, find something or someone that opens another lead or multiple, and so on until you reach the conclusion of that mystery. But you have complete freedom to choose here. None of the leads are required to complete the game. You can abandon them at any time if you think they'll lead to a dead end, or if another seems more promising. Hell, you can even take a gamble and outright kill any NPC at any time if you think that they've already got what you're after. In fact, a player agency is so boundless here that I'm pretty sure it's entirely possible to finish this game without picking up a single clue or talking to anyone. But obviously, it's in your best interest to do so, because without them, you'd just be wandering aimlessly, at least on your first playthrough. Functionally, it's not dissimilar to traditional quest design, but there are some key differences here, I think. I love that they're not signposted to you. The only way you'll find them is through your own curiosity. Many times, I thought the conversation was over, only to pry a little more and end up being rewarded with yet another lead. I also appreciate that there's no extrinsic carrot on the stick compelling you to do them, because the real reward is information. Everything else is just a bonus. There's no UI element or whatever showing you the possible rewards. Some will promise that your efforts will be worth your while, but you can never really know. You just kind of have to take their word for it, and that hint of mystery makes every thread so compelling to pull at. And this all funnels very cleverly into your exploration of the Interchange, a research facility built deep underground that holds the key to this conspiracy and your escape. It's this interconnected area that almost has a Metroidvania layout to it, requiring certain tools to fully explore. That's all I'll say about that, because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, safe to say chasing some of those leads is going to be quite handy here. Overall, really big fan of this approach to a non-linear narrative. Rebellion do deliver on that conceit. You'll regularly just be walking in some direction and then happen upon some random NPC, have a conversation with them that unfurls into a broader mystery involving multiple characters, where you might have to make decisions about who to trust or betray. I don't want to give any specific examples because this isn't a long game and investigating these for yourself is the main fun of it, but yeah, take my word for it, it's great stuff. The broader narrative does trip toward the end though. While that didn't completely sour the experience for me, it may for some. I mean, when you play a game that's all about untangling a big mystery, about building relationships, you'd kind of hope that it all leads to a strong payoff. But the major reveal at the center of this conspiracy felt quite tropey and predictable, and the two endings I did were similarly unsatisfying. I never got to actually see the aftermath of my actions. It's all just sort of explained to you as vague exposition over a slideshow before the credits roll, and in the end, neither of them offered meaningfully different outcomes anyway. I guess that could be because there's DLC on the way and Rebellion needed everyone to have the same jumping off point for that. And there's also every chance that some of the other endings have a little more oomph, but for me, it stumbled just short of the finish line. But it wasn't enough to make me feel like I wasted my time, because the journey up to that point is so genuinely captivating on account of this freeform structure, the other mysteries you stumble into, and the colorful characters you meet. Rebellion exceeded my expectations in this regard, making my path across the quarantine zone feel truly unique to me, led by my own intuition in a way that precious few other games have, even those with similar investigative systems. That's a win in my book, and I'd love to see future games from Rebellion or from other studios learn from this success and build off that interesting conceit. How I feel about the rest of Atomfall though, that's a little more mixed. When it comes to Atomfall's other components like world design, survival, combat, and stealth, there's a sort of less is more philosophy here, and while in some ways that leads to refreshing design set against the current gaming landscape, in other ways it leaves some of these parts feeling a touch underbaked. Let's start with the visuals and world design. So interior spaces look absolutely fantastic. Every area has a visual distinctiveness and is packed with detail, homes of survivors cluttered with supplies, eerie research facilities in a state of disrepair, cave systems look appropriately gloomy. Of particular note here is the lighting. You'll see stunning light shafts spilling through windows into homes reclaimed by nature, dark spaces illuminated by the warm glow of candles or fading lamplights. The atmosphere in these spaces is palpable. But then I'd step into the outdoor areas, and yeah, it's not quite as nice to look at. When you first step into the world, you're met with a fairly expansive vista. It's admittedly impressive in its scale and composition from afar, but look any closer and you'll notice some really rough aliasing, giving distant assets an unpleasant shimmering effect. And the lighting here always looks quite flat, just sort of sucking all the atmosphere out of it. That's in no small part because rural England is apparently always bright and sunny. There's no day-night cycle or weather system that might have offered some variety in its atmosphere or even its gameplay. I could have imagined scenarios where at night stealth becomes a little easier, but there are more cultists and outlaws roaming while the people are asleep or something. But that's not a thing here. Not just that, but all the explorable zones look very alike. You'll see a lot of the same greenery and cliff faces dotted by similar enemy camps and abandoned shacks. For what it's worth, I love that there's no fast travel. It's rewarding to learn which paths are safest and where to avoid. By the end of the game, I knew these zones like the back of my hand. But yeah, the lack of variety in their visuals or the way that you navigate through them did make the exploration experience grow a little stale. How about the survival elements then? Rebellion does label this as a survival game after all, but that's used in a very loose sense. It's more in reference to the fact that the health doesn't auto-regenerate and ammo is scarce, so you're constantly on the hunt for supplies. Despite there being a lack of actual survival mechanics here though, it does mostly succeed in fulfilling that survivalist fantasy, in large part due to its old school design. It starts with your inventory, which is very limited. All you've got is this 3x4 grid with a few extra weapon slots. Every item here takes up the same amount of space and none of it stacks, so if you want to carry around like 2 or 3 bandages, that's like a quarter of your inventory that you can't use for things like grenades, potions, even quest items. You've also got very limited ammo capacity, so you can't overstock on ammo and go into every encounter guns blazing. There are occasions where you'll run into merchants and some of their goods might look really enticing, but the only way to trade with them is by bartering with items of your own. A cool touch here is that each merchant values items differently, so it takes a bit of experimentation to figure out the most economical way of getting what you need. Depending on who you are, a lot of that might sound kind of annoying, but I like it a lot. It all forces you to be really selective about what deserves a spot in your inventory. Having to be diligent about your inventory really reinforces that survivalist fantasy, I think. And the limitations here encourage you to plan around the short term just as much as you do the long term. However, I'm not a big fan of how all this is presented. The inventory and crafting menus are very plain, they're very video gamey. They take up your entire screen without even the benefit of pausing the game in the background. And you're having to pull these up every time you need to heal up or swig a drink or craft a grenade, which is often. And it's even more awkward trying to do any of this during combat. You can slot items into this small radial menu, but since consumables don't stack, that's best reserved for weapons. And yeah, I mean, I guess on some level that makes sense. It should be awkward to multitask while bandits are trying to shoot you in the face. But I would have loved to have seen this instead presented in a more diegetic way, like the map in Indiana Jones or the Fallout Pip-Boy. It's kind of a minor nitpick in the grand scheme of things, but the look and frequency of these menus just kind of regularly break the immersion, which is otherwise preserved quite well. That's especially true of the combat, which is again simple but effective. You're not going to come across any crazy makeshift weaponry or retro future stuff. It's 1960s firearms firearms, ranging from handguns to shotguns to automatic rifles. There's actually a decent amount here. Their animations and sound design make them feel fantastic to fire. They have a ton of kick to them, with every shot causing the enemy to recoil or backflip from the impact. Then you've also got a smattering of melee weapons, from knives to sickles to two-handed maces courtesy of the cultists, that feel equally satisfying to use. I think combat might have benefited from a block or parry button though. While you can kick the enemy to stun them for a brief time and hit them with the butt of your gun, a lot of the melee exchanges kind of devolve into this awkward game of chicken, where every time you charge a swing, the enemy scoots back, and then you wait for them to whiff their attack so you can finally get some hits in. Enemy AI in general also leaves a lot to be desired. They just beeline directly toward you without a care in the world. Just looks a bit silly. Overall though, I think the combat is pretty solid. The weapon handling and feedback does manage to carry it, as does the tuning. On the standard difficulty, it can be quite tricky. You can die in just a few hits, but at the same time, enemies can be taken out with a single well-placed headshot. All this in combination with the fact that there's no health bars, no power levels or damage values to track, made for a rather immersive and engaging combat loop. Given the scarcity of ammo though, and how easily you can die, you'll mostly be turning to stealth as your first plan of attack. This I'm more disappointed with, especially given Rebellion's history with the Sniper Elite series, which is all about stealth. Again, I really appreciate the simple design here, the fact that there's no way to mark targets, no radar, no ping, no X-ray vision. You need to actually use your eyes and ears to track targets. What a novel concept. At the same time, it's a little too simple. Like, given the amount that you're incentivized to play stealthy, the sandbox isn't quite sophisticated enough to support it. Your options here are avoid sightlines, crouch in long grass, snipe with a bow, or sneak up for a silent takedown. That's basically it. Now, I recognize that doesn't sound too far off from like Ubisoft's stealth model, particularly their recent Avatar game, but you typically have a few more tools, and the stealth in those games is often elevated by the verticality of levels, working in tandem with an agile movement system. Atomfall has no such thing. Climbing things takes a long time, you can't throw things to distract enemies or place traps like they can, at least as far as I'm aware, and this can lead to some frustrating moments where you're doing your absolute best to go the stealthy route like the game wants you to, but you just keep getting caught out, and there's just not a lot you can do to change up your approach. Having extra tools to unlock would have really helped to bolster progression, since there is a perk system here, but this too falls short. I really like how you acquire these perks. There are training manuals out in the world or stocked by relevant vendors. Then to actually train those skills, you'll need to find skill points. Alongside finding leads and general supplies, this works really well at providing yet another incentive to explore off the beaten path. But the perks themselves are just boring. A little less recoil when firing a gun, a slightly faster crafting speed, your silent takedowns are a bit more silent. It's very safe, very familiar, nothing that'll meaningfully evolve or expand your capabilities. Given that there aren't that many of them to begin with, it's a shame more work wasn't put into these to make them worth chasing, and to maybe reflect how the quarantine zone has changed you. So presentation, survival elements, combat, progression, for everything I like about each of these aspects, there's also some area where it falls short. Was it enough to kill my enjoyment of Atomfall though? Well, no. They're unambitious, but functional enough that they don't completely crater the experience. There's still a lot I appreciate about Atomfall's simplicity. It's got some strong bones, enough to carry it over the line, which I think is a testament to how the better parts of old school game design can still hold up today.
Do you have the materials I need?
Who told you that was here? Who sent you?
So to be honest, I kind of struggled with where to place Atomfall after hitting the credits. What I do want to stress is that this is a distinctly AA game in most respects, and that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, pun intended. There's a scrappiness to it that people like me will find kind of endearing, but others may not. Its rough edges do come through in its visuals, its menus, its underbaked stealth and progression, hell, the fact that there's only like 2 or 3 character models for each faction. A full playthrough will also run you about 10 to 12 hours, which does make it digestible, but it is on the lean side, and while there is some replayability flexibility there in its multiple endings. I'm unsure most people will feel compelled to do those if my underwhelming experience with them is anything to go by. All that makes it kind of a tough sell at its $50 price point, I think. But do note that there is regional pricing, which is nice, and it's also available on Game Pass on day one, and I feel much more confident in recommending you pick it up there. In fact, I think Atomfall is a fantastic use case for Game Pass, not because it's bad or mid or whatever, but because its unorthodox design does make it a riskier purchase at full price. But I do think you should check it out when you get the chance. Its archaic design leads to mixed results, but its modest runtime meant its shortcomings never became too grating. It's clear most of Rebellion's focus and ambition was poured into that non-linear structure, and in that, they really deliver. So when I step back and think about the experience as a whole, yeah, I can say that I really did enjoy my time with Atomfall. It gets a thumbs up from me. It has a lot of great qualities worth experiencing for yourself, things that even the AAA industry could take notes on. It's the sort of game I imagine people will look back at in a few years' time, going, hey, remember that game with that sick thing where it didn't have a main quest line? You just kind of had to figure out your own way to the end? We probably won't remember much else, but that fascinating structure and the amount of agency it affords you does give this game a timeless quality. More than anything, if you're looking for a game that'll transport you back to a time where game design was a little more simple but no less experimental, Atomfall will take you there. And for that reason, I recommend it to you.
All right, time to talk about this video sponsor, Raycons. Now, I'm sure you've heard of them before. You've no doubt seen them advertised elsewhere on the internet. However, what you might not know is that they've actually just done a big refresh on their flagship everyday earbuds, and they're now better than ever. Like, for example, did you know that they now have active noise cancelling? That's a feature that you need to pay a lot more for from other brands, but Raycon have included it here in their refresh while still maintaining their famously reasonable price. There's also improved battery life. These things will go up to 32 hours now, 8 hours of direct playtime, and a fast charging case that will get you 90 minutes of playback in just 10 minutes. Raycons also come in a range of colors. I personally chose the black one. However, you will notice this is not black because they also sell these cases allowing you to customize the case with different sets of colors. I like this yellow one because it makes it really easy to find it if I leave it laying around the house, which I always do. But the home is not the only place I have my Raycons. I also keep a pair in my gym bag because I hate being at the gym without any music in my ears. And it's actually quite common for people to have more than one pair of Raycons because they're really affordable. And that's the biggest difference between them and other brands. They give you the same level of quality at a significantly reduced price. Plus, with these new features, it's a slam dunk. I mean, did you know they also have multi-device connectivity, which means that you connect it to like your phone and your iPad at the same time, moving seamlessly between the two. That wasn't a feature on the previous versions of Raycons, but these ones have it. It's fantastic. I personally use Raycons, plus I've given them as gifts to other people multiple times now. Particularly like older people I found really like these because they often don't know what earbuds are. These, and they're like, what is this black magic? And then you give them a pair of Raycons, which is, a pretty reasonably priced gift. Like it's, it's within the budget generally speaking. And they're blown away by it. So yeah, just think about that next time gifting rolls around for a birthday or Christmas or whatever. These work really well. If you want to grab a pair for yourself or others, then you're in luck because Raycon are doing a special deal for viewers of this channel. Visit buyraycon.com/skillup to get 20% off your order. That link is below and in the pinned comment, but it's buyraycon.com/skillup for 20% off. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring the video, and a big thanks to you for watching it.